the day, it's about winning a World Series. But if you look at using baseball as an example, the Dodgers had the best National League record, and they developed their club their way. And the Yankees had the best American League record. So in the old pennant days, it still worked out. So I think we have to look at a system that we are having coaches that we're supporting through USA Track and Field, whether they're in college or out, that we're looking for the development of United States athletes, whether we coach foreigners or not. I've coached foreigners before, but they also know that my goal is to try to get as many teams and many Americans on our national teams. And I think that's in the bottom line. I think how do we continue to get that message across and develop that message, regardless if you're going, whether you're bringing a foreigner or not. Um,
Yeah, I think
Well,
since we're
I wasn't saying I was against foreign athletes per
right.
se. I'm talking about old foreign
Yeah,
athletes. If they're
it's the
coming
age
out of
thing.
high school and, like I said, they're 17, 18, 19, even 20 years old, fine. They're, for the most part, we're talking about developmental athletes. But that's not what's
No.
happening at some programs.
Yeah, but you're
Kind of.
right. And I think that's where we have to look at. If Sue and I had Jackie Joyner, and we got criticized at one time not sending Jackie to Russia, because we felt that even though she made the team, she wasn't ready to compete against the Russians, and we knew that the Russians were going to come the following year. So what we decided to do is keep her home, develop her another year,
Because it's right home.
wait for her to get the conditions. So I'm just saying, whether I got a 23-year-old foreigner or a 19-year-old American, I'm telling that American, this foreigner might be 2 or 3 years ahead of you, but within the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to develop you to, on an international level, to where you're going to develop. So I just think it still comes down to how we're going to develop it. If you do, once again, if you got a pro team, you got some older uh athletes that's on that team that's going to teach some of the young players that, hey, listen, I've been to a World Series before, or I've been to a Super Bowl before. So I think in my case, sometimes, I mean, I'm not fighting the NCAA battle, so that's a whole different story. Now, if I'm fighting the NCAA battle and I'm trying to recruit American athletes, as we're talking about, and then you're bringing all these foreigners at 22 and 23 or whatever, then I'm going to have to tell my AD I can't compete against that, and have a 4 or 5 year program of developing American athletes. I'm not going to catch up with them until probably year 2 or 3.
Well, I think that's the thing that now, since Jeremy seems to be MIA and we've got Bobby as a pleasant surprise, let's kind of shift or keep this dialogue going if that's what you want. Or Bobby does know a few things about jumps, or we could talk about 400 hurdles. What is the pleasure of the group here? Or Bobby, what's your pleasure? Because like I
Well, I'm good. Well, when I want to just say I'm going to try to lend my name to this and hopefully keep building the process, especially in remember of Brooks, because Brooks, I got workouts now that I look back from this year that Brooks gave me years ago that I'm still using. So I just think that in terms of where all of a sudden I became I was one of the young brats. Arguing and cussing Brooks out back in 1984, and now I'm the one that's looking at people looking at me like, who this old man think he is? So, so I kind of be careful what you do when you're young, because it's gonna come back and bite you in the ass later on. So, but I just think that there is. And there's, and with all the social media and all the changes, and like we're talking about the foreign athletes and the NCAA rules and the NILs or whatever, all that stuff. It's a new uh, uh, development system that we have to, from old school, that we have to look going moving forward. That is still comes down to numbers at the end of the, like Brooks used to say, putting asses in seats. We're still putting asses on teams, to for us to represent the United States in the best way. So I still think it comes down to us as coaches that's been there, done that, and as athletes that's coming up and coaches that's coming up and saying, "Hey, listen, whether you have a foreigner or not, I still think if you're an American coach and you coach in American colleges or you got an American program, one of our top priorities is to um, um, develop American athletes. I've been criticized about Sydney, but how can the foreigners or the world talk about me, how many times I run or not run, or whether I run in the Diamond League or not Diamond League? At the end of the day, the result speaks for itself. So my thing is looking out for the best interests of Sydney and the United States. Uh, and whether it's a theme mode going forward and keeping her healthy and as a young athlete, mentally and physically, and having her ready for the next two or three Olympic Games that's capable. I was 19 years with Allison from when she came to me to the time she left, and so it's a long process of development, but we're responsible for putting American athletes on international teams and winning medals.
Well, I think we have two different groups, unfortunately, with two different objectives. We've got USA Track and Field, which is the gold medals and the medal count, and that's the USOPC, who, as I found out through Paris, and then recently I went to the board meeting this last weekend, that their focus now is on gold medals, not just the count, the overall team count. They want us, meaning USOPC wants USATF now to win the gold medal count. And if you'll remember, we tied, I think, with China, or we're one ahead of China. So that's going to be number one, a hassle. So we got that group. Then, as most of you are involved with the collegiate system, whether it's, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JC, whatever, and your goal is to win. That's what your athletic director is paying you, I'm assuming, for, is to win, and probably win now or win sooner than later. And of course, I think that's where we get pulled in, that the older foreign athletes are coming in. And again, let's, differentiate. We're not against foreign athletes per se. However, they will take up a spot from a young USA athlete who maybe is not quite as developed yet. And that's not what the college is getting paid to, the college coach isn't getting paid to do. Unfortunately, he's paid to win. So we get this pull back and forth. Bobby, you'd mentioned Sydney, and since you mentioned her, how is this going to, with her in the Grand Slam League or whatever it's called, how is this affecting your planning for her next year, where she has to run so many races?
No, I think it's the same thing. I just think that you develop the plan around the situation, and at the end of the day, it's the having her ready at the end. And so whether it's a Grand Slam meet or whether it's a time trial, in practice, I'm gonna monitor that. So I just think once again, it's we're looking at the programs and looking at the long range objectives, and that is to develop the athlete through whether they're running one meet or 12 meets, depending on how your program goes, to be ready at the end. I can talk strongly about all sides. If you look at Gail Devers, went all the way through UCLA. Jackie Joyner went all the way through UCLA. Jeanette Bowden went through Northridge and through UCLA. Alice Brown went all the way through Northridge. Nicole Leach. And they won NCAA and WAC championships. Amy Acuff. You're looking at we can develop them through the college season, and they can still go all the way through. Where you look, once again, you look at Sydney might only did 1 year, or Allison Felix didn't go through college at all. I worked with Eunice Barber from France while I was working with Jackie Joyner and Gail and others. So and Jackie helped Eunice, and Eunice helped Jackie in training. And one won the world championship in her home country for France, and we know what Jackie's done. So I just think that if the ultimate goal is for us to continue to look at how we're going to develop our athletes, whether it's through the collegiate system, because I think the collegiate program's got to worry about it. Because if you go back to where we used to do, Sue, is you got club programs or you got financial support and other matters that, if we're looking at saying, hey, listen, if to go back to the old basketball or what, the one and done situation or whatever, you're gonna have those situations too. So I think it's continuously talking about developing programs that is going to help develop, whether it's in college or out of college, whether it's one track meet or 20 track meets. That's going to be the ultimate goal, is to have our athletes ready to make our top athletes to make teams. And eventually, like you said, Sue, is that if it's come down to the medal count to win gold medals, well, if we can get them on teams and we can develop them right, and we got the best talent, then eventually the cream going to rise to the top.
Right. Well, college coaches, step in here and offer some advice or how you're approaching this, because this NC2A seems to be changing hourly on some of the requirements and the rules and so forth. And most of you, as I look at the screens, most of you are a college or college related. Do you have comments to the things that
Yeah,
Al brought up?
I'll hop in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everything's changing kind of weekly with the roster limits coming into play. So at our school, we're not fully funded. We only got 4.1 scholarships on the men, 5.1 on the women. So we kind of have to make do with what we got. But with the roster limits, it kind of limits, how many kids we can even bring into school each year. So normally I had 25 slots so that I could ask for admissions. This year I got 15. That's men and women, cross country and track combined. So, I mean, all it does is like Coach was mentioning, you're going for championships. So, like, I don't worry about the conference. I'm just looking at how can be top 25 at the national meet. Who can come in right now? So, I had a few kids I signed for a couple $1,000 that can kind of fill in behind, but then I went after one stud that was 46.3 in the 400, and I know, all right, this guy can come in and lead the pack, and that trickles down to the conference level. We can win the 4x4, and that kid could probably double and do 400, 200, and that kind of helps the whole team at that level. So I think just whatever the rules are, we can't gripe about it. We just got to find a way to win. This is the hand you're dealt. You got to find a way to win. So I think a lot of people are complaining because, schools like Tennessee and Charlotte, they have 60 plus per gender. Right. I know Texas A&M brings in 75 kids a year, and they can't do that anymore. I think it is kind of rushed. I feel like they're trying to do this all right now and get this down right now. But like we had 58 guys or 58 girls and 56 guys at the start of this year. And we got to be down to 50 and 50 by January, and then 45 and 45, obviously by next year. So I think it is a little bit rushed, and I think there's going to be a lot of students that are flooding the portal. So what my plan has been is, all right, I'm in California. I'm going to go after the top high school talent in California. If they turn me down, then I'll look to the portal. So like we've already had for a visit, like the top long jumper in the state, top high jumper in the state, and then the top distance runner. And if they turn us down, so be it, but we're not going to settle on like people that are below that level. Because I think there's going to be a lot of kids in the portal that are going to be really talented that are going to have to get passed up on for maybe there are some internationals that are going to be coming in. For us, we have like 30K of out of state fees and international fees. So it's just not feasible. So we have to do what's right for our program. I think everyone's just going to have to find a new winning formula for what's going to be right for them. You're never going to be able to get every kid. That's just the reality of it. So you got to find the right kid that's going to fit you.
Right.
Uh,
And Jeremy,
so
just a second, Jeremy's going to be logging in here momentarily. He had the wrong time. And so then we'll kind of go back to our original topic for today, but we can continue on this even next week or so with that. So Al?
one of the things, Bobby and I'm 74, so I was at Florida State battling him at UCLA.
Right.
And I remember when I was in St. Louis, I was good friends with Nino Fenoy, and we both had track clubs. And I saw Jackie when she was very young, and but the thing, Andy, that I don't know if you spoke about this, but the older Kenyans that are coming in are not really ever going to be on Olympic teams, even though they're doing well in the NCAA. And what you don't know is if you get a kid, you probably know, but they're selling them to you, Joe Walker Jr. and or Joe Walker the third, and cost you 25 grand. You pay them 25 grand for that Kenyan. Florida did, Alabama did, Arkansas did, LSU did. And when I was at Mississippi State, I know that my AD wouldn't have let that happen, even though we got Marco Arop, and he's done pretty well. And we ran 301 so many times, I can't count, in the 4x4 on the men's side. And, you know, at least one of those was always a Canadian. But, really the ones that are going to college right now are never going to be the ones other than our 400 kid from Grenada in Alabama. He came in as a freshman with Harvey, and he did very well with him, and he won gold medals and world championships. But he didn't have to pay for him as they are now. And you got to have ADs that are willing, Andy, to pay 25 grand to get one of those Kenyans that can win nationals or come or score at nationals. And even in the SEC schools, not everybody is willing to do that. When I was at Mississippi State and at Florida State, we didn't need to, because it was like selling Christmas at Florida State back in the day when UCLA and us were 1 and 2 at nationals, and flip-flop back and forth. But back in the 80s, and we didn't need to pay anybody.
Al, when you say this paying 25K, is that their scholarship or is that
No,
admission?
that's you have to pay the scouting group.
It's a
You have to pay
scouting
Joe Walker's group 25 grand to get someone who can score at nationals from Kenya
Wow.
or
I've
anywhere
never heard
else.
of that.
Huh?
So Andy,
I've never heard of that.
It's
And
out
It's
there.
not that expensive. It's $2,500 to $3,000.
Well,
Not
unfortunately,
in the
I think we're
Southeast
wrong.
Conference.
okay,
I'll tell
okay,
you right now that 20,000
Wow.
is a real number.
guys,
Really?
yeah, one at a time.
Really.
So
It's-
Jeremy is on joining us now, and Jeremy, we've kind of been discussing the last half hour about older foreign athletes and how that's affecting development, primarily in the distance group. And then Bobby's been on too, which has been a pleasant surprise, because then he's added, his historical part and so forth. So I think since we have Jeremy, let's go back to our regular topic, but then let's maybe continue, because it sounds like this is a whole new can of worms here on this finder's fee or scouting fee or whatever you're calling it. That's news to me, but very sad about that too, or disappointing with that. So Jeremy, hi, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on. I apologize for being late. I have no excuse because Bobby's on here. So me using the West Coast and having that all screwed up, I had it all set for 6 o'clock. I wrote some notes. I have one thing I do every Wednesday is I meet with coaches, either that I've mentored or I've talked to or mentored me, and I just listen to them kind of tell me. It's about every 2, 3 weeks. I listen to a couple coaches and I just have them talk to me about what's new and updated, whether it's college or pro or kind of whatever. And so that was kind of what I was doing earlier. And so it just opened my mind to some new cool things that I really, really enjoy. And I get to listen to the issue with the college coaches too. Because it's not the same, game. I mean, I know one of my best friends, he's the director of track and field at UC Irvine, and he's worried if they'll even have a men's program, 2 to 3 years. And so, landscape's changing. I can just say from a jump standpoint and a field event standpoint, the field events are dying. And the reason the field events are dying is if you're not a medalist or a medal contention, you're not getting ship. And I've literally, just myself, things have changed. I was the director of the training center. We produced 27 Olympic and World Championship medalists over the years. I was fortunate while I was there to able to coach 19 Olympic and World Champ medalists. And I'm not complaining about the situation, but the realistic is the situation is if I was a coach who was on the market and I was a sprint coach or distance coach, there's no way I wouldn't have a shoe company money at me to create a group. And but it's what we are. I coach the jumps. I've been asked to coach the sprints, but I mean, with Bobby and everybody else, there's amazing sprint coaches out there. But there's not a lot of field event and jumps groups, and there's no training enclaves. I mean, you got like 19 distance enclaves, there's 11 or 12 sprint enclaves, and there's zero field event enclaves. And so I've continued to stay in that area. I work with foreign athletes to help me kind of bills and been fortunate with online business and different things like that. Uh, Even from my standpoint, I can sit there and look. I've had a lot of success. You guys know the names: Will Clay, Brittany Reese, Couture Orgy, people like that. But even from my standpoint, I've had failures. I've had trouble with the developmental athletes, and they're not necessarily developmental athletes. They're the athletes that came out of college who really need to put a mark out there to get to that next level. And so I talk to a lot of college coaches, so I can kind of blend that to world and Olympic medalists. I mean, Brittany and Will are freakish athletes. I mean, they're amazing. But I've also been fortunate to bring people like Chris Bernard. I mean, he missed the medal by 2 centimeters. Guy, I think highest finish at NCAA's was place. And now we're not getting the support to do that. Sue and I have talked about that numerous times. One of the athletes she had, and it's sad because they don't see it, but I see the writing on the wall. And I mean, we look at the women's jumps; they did a fantastic job. But we look on the men's side, and we didn't have any medalist, and that's sad because we're such a sorry, we had one in the high jump, but we didn't have one in the long or one in the triple, even though I think we have great talent coming up.
Well,
That's kind of where. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, you finish. I'm sorry.
Okay. And no, I just, and so my thing is that my, growth now is taking a step back from the elite athletes. I won't put any names out there, but, I've had two really, world-class super athletes that were looking to work with me. And, things have changed for me. I'm back into the development part of the game, I kind of say for myself. So I'm really excited. I have five high jumpers out of college. None of them are national champions. I think they're talented, and I think they can all jump, over 230, and definitely a couple of them could even jump over 235. And so I'm excited to kind of, develop those into potential medalists and so forth like that. So even from my standpoint, some of the things I'll talk about is just the differences and the things that I see and the progression that needs to happen through what it takes, for those athletes to medal. And I'm fortunate, I'm like Coach Kersee, where I sat there and I have athletes for 8 years, 10 years. And so how they evolve and change over that time is big. And, and no disrespect or disparagement to any college coach, because, I was a longtime college coach. But if we're relying on our college coaches to support the field event athletes, we're asking a lot. Because you guys know the field events, the jumps and the throws, they are very time consuming events. They're very time consuming events. And because, Ralph Mann could make a biomechanics model of a sprinter and, it probably has about a 5% variance and stuff like that. And there's always going to be those outliers. I mean, with jumpers, you can have, someone jump a female jump 2 meters and 10 different ways to get to 2 meters. And so I just think with that, it just takes more creativeness, more ingenuity, kind of things like that, and be able to do that while the athlete doesn't have the support and that they'll have like they would in a training enclave and support like that. So, um, Sue, did you want to say something before I kind of get?
I wanted to follow up. This past weekend, our board of directors, USATF board of directors, met here in Phoenix. And so as a member, you can go sit in the open sections. And so I did. And I do have to compliment, and I told Robert Chapman personally, he gave the best presentation I've ever heard him give, which I've heard many and been very frustrated with most of them. But the way he explained what they are looking at now and moving forward the next quadrennium, and again, I'll wait to see how this all plays out, is that they are, very happy with the way the throws initiative has come through and worked, and they're continuing that. But last year at the annual meeting, he suddenly popped in saying they were doing a horizontal jump initiative. And then we didn't hear anything about it. And so I was waiting to see, because of course, high jump needs to be included, not just the horizontals, because women's high jump especially is just pathetic right now. We can't even field three. And so the way it came out, and Jeremy, you might be glad to hear this, is that they are targeting as the next event that is the most available for medals, so to speak, is men's triple. And so that's what they're going to be focusing on in addition to throws now in this next year. So now we'll see what that means for the Chris Bernards or whatever. It also means that I've been talking with Eric Kennard trying to get something going with the high jump also, and we'll see how that flows in or doesn't flow in. But they are looking at, because of this gold medal emphasis now, they're looking for what they call, the next available events where the medals are, because we had such a good fourth, fifth, sixth place showing that there are more medals out there, for that. So it's going to be interesting to see. But if you are going to the annual meeting in Orlando, definitely sit in and listen to Chapman's presentation, because the way he's explaining it now makes a whole lot more sense than the way he has in the past X number of years. But we'll see, again, actions are what I look for, not just all these words and everything. But Jeremy, we've got a few questions here in the chat, because again, the topic today, before we got going with all the development stuff, which is near and dear to my heart, was on jumping and preparation, how and what preparations you would be suggesting for jumpers right now. So I'm going to just throw some questions, or you can look in the chat and see them too. And let's just go.
Yeah. Well, I was going to talk about some things. I kind of put
Sure.
them out a little bit. So if
Okay.
I don't cover it, then I'll cover those questions. The only thing I'll say about the jumps initiative and all that kind of stuff is, of course, I mean, we aged out. We had Christian and Will winning medals for 3 Olympiads. Dendy and Lawson are pretty much, at that retirement age, and they're getting kind of older and stuff like that. And
Right.
it's hard for their bodies to stay kind of healthy. On the women's side, we have I mean, we just lost Couture. We don't know what Tori's doing. We have one, female triple jumper right now at that level. And we're pretty blessed because Jasmine is along. And obviously we have Tar right now who keeps on with that. And Monet is fantastic. And we've always had great jumpers there. But just from that standpoint I'd just be interested to hear what they say. But to me, I'm actually out of the horizontal jumps business. I'm coaching high jumpers right now. So I'm tired of everyone telling me I'm a 7'6" high jumper who doesn't coach high jumpers. So that's where I'm at right now. But no, I'm just kidding. But so I kind of thought about this. You gave me, and again, I apologize for being late, but it's preseason thoughts for preparing the body for the season. That's kind of the main thing I look at it. So, I was supposed to be a doctor, and I became a track coach, and I don't look back. I don't regret it for 1 second. As you guys may or may not know, I've written coaching education for USA Track and Field and World Athletics, and I get to teach a lot. But over this last year, I've really taken the time and effort to listen to other people. I've reached out, Jerome, I see you on here. I'm gonna probably be hollering at you soon, but I literally am going through my Rolodex coaches and just asking them questions. Some of the best moments, and I'll say this before I start, was, I mean, guys, I was so lucky. Bobby brought his out, okay, and Brooks would bring his group out, and I would be done with practice, and I would just sit there and listen to them coaching. And still, one of the master classes I ever sat and watched was Bobby teaching the curve mechanics and the break of how it was resonated with me. And when I talked to Brooks, and he just sat there, and I remember one of the first times I started coaching, he said, "Yeah, runway speed, running on the runway is like running a 200." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like a 200 sucks. Every jumper hates a 200." But even though the great jumpers are good 200-meter run, but it's when I learned and educated myself. But basically, it's the same running style and mechanics because you're running at a 97% of your max velocity, which is about what you'd run in the 200. And it's the same elasticity in the run compared to an absolute sprint. And so those are just, gems I'm able to pick up because at the training center, I mean, Mac Wilkins, Bobby Kersee, Al Joyner, I mean, you name it, foreign athletes, I get to just listen to them and really just learn something different and get away from even the American, style of coaching. And it was so amazing. And I mean, Sue, I mean, a lot of you guys don't know, but Sue was one of my mentors. I mean, she was answering my questions as a young coach all the time. And I I want to apologize if anybody else is on here, but she's the only one on here who's coached the Olympic gold medalist in the high jump. So, there we go. And but anyways, let me get back. So the key factors for performance, which I see in jumpers, and the things that I'm trying to look for in jumpers is, okay, what are we looking at? So I'm privy to all the biomechanics. Okay, so it's like, all right, let me the biomechanics. We know that for a high jumper, they're roughly about 8 times their body weight when they're at takeoff. Okay, we know that. For a long jumper, we know 4 to 6 times their body weight, depending on what they are. And we've seen triple jumpers. I mean, everybody up the gamut. The most I've heard is really seen from a biomechanics standpoint is 15 times their body weight on single support. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, how many pounds of pressure? How much do they need to be able to handle? If we're looking at vertical velocities, and the men and women are actually pretty similar, we're looking somewhere around, 4 meters per second of vertical velocity. We're looking about 3.5 in the long jump, and we're looking about 3.5 in the triple jump. All right, so that means when they from the board or the ground or whatever, their vertical velocities meters per second measured by biomechanics is there. Okay. Now, the horizontal velocity, I don't understand how they get it wrong so much. I mean, they were saying that like 11 meters per second. And I sat there and said, okay, if Rojas is running 11 meters per second, she sure as hell should be jumping 18 meters, not 15, 16 and or 15.5 meters. So, anybody who believed that, I was like, well, she's in the wrong event because, she should be running the 100 at, definitely the 200 at 6'4" or 5. So sometimes you got to even be careful the stuff that they put out there. But what we see a lot, men and women are between 6 to 8 meters per second. So, that's relatively, good speed, but, nothing crazy. And elite, and this is all elite athletes. For the women, we're seeing between 9 and 10 meters per second in both long jumps and triple jumps. And even in the women's triple jump, we're seeing even 8.8 close. I mean, we had some Europeans who could jump almost 15 meters. And then we're seeing between 10 meters per second and 11 for the men's triple jump. Okay, so I'm also looking at that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I'm looking at is ground contact times. We're looking at 0.12 to 0.16 seconds on the ground contact times at takeoff. 0.12 to 0.14 is maybe long and triple, 0.16 up in the high jump, obviously, because of how they're posting. All right. So when I look at those factors, then I'm sitting there saying, okay, how am I training my athletes to get ready and meet the demands of the event? All right. This is such an interesting year this year. And because of social media, I can see what other coaches are doing and stuff like that. And I don't ever judge anybody else. It is hard enough to coach my own athletes without saying that this person should be doing this or this person should be doing that, right? And I do not live, in a platinum house. I live in a glass house, right? My athletes do not hit 100% of the time. I guess why I'm an elite coach, I make less mistakes than I did when I first started coaching at Cal State Northridge. That's probably what's evolved and stuff like that. But I'm sitting there and I'm doing to my best. I'm trying to read all the stuff and I'm trying to look at the things to make sure that I am getting my athletes right and correct. So even before I start doing any of this, I reach out to, we had Lenny Waite with USA Track and Field, Brian Zuliger, who is a Wisconsin grad like me, many years later. I think he's at App State. Lenny, I think she's somewhere in Minneapolis now or something. But I have them, all my athletes do an assessment. Guys, there's free assessments. You can use assessment. Colorado State has a free assessment. NC State has a free assessment. A lot of psychology programs have free assessments that you don't have to pay for. But I want to learn how motivated, how, intrinsically motivated, extrinsically motivated my athletes are, how I'm going to work with them from that standpoint. I mean, I hate it that now I'm, closing in on my, 50th year and I feel like there's a lot of disconnect and I'm that guy, that guy who's saying, well, back in the day, it's this and that. And it's so different. Like, I see these athletes trying on uniforms on their recruiting trips and I'd be like, hell no, that's not happening. We had to earn our ability to wear a uniform. And that's why I can't be in college anymore because, I know that they have to do it that way. And so it's just little things like that. But for me, the one thing that is important is I need to learn what kind of learnings or what kind of way are my athletes motivated, right? So I do these assessments so I know what I'm working with. I think that's even more sometimes than clinical kind of training. Because I mean, we've had plenty of athletes that we just haven't been able to reach that are way more talented than their ability, shows. And so that's the first thing we do. We do an assessment from either like I know I talked to Adam or Brian Zuliger, sorry, Brian Zuliger, and he said that basically, a while ago, he said most of the learning styles that's kind of outdated, and there wasn't enough things to verify that those work. So now, we know that it's motivation. It's how the athletes we can reach the athletes and coach them the best. I mean, I know sometimes we spend a whole year trying to figure that out. And now I have a tool where, 99% of the time it's dead on how I talk to the athlete and how they're motivated. So that's important to me. Then after that, then I start looking into, stuff that's just like, I'm pretty lucky. I did biomechanics and exercise phys as a master's degree, but I even feel like it's changed since, my days of kind of learning and things come back around again. In the distance realm, it's like I guess this company finally got sodium bicarbonate right. So everybody's using sodium bicarbonate where, they were using that in the 80s, but they were pooping all over themselves and, upsetting their stomachs. But a company got it right to where it's not causing as many, bowel issues and stuff like that. But I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to, know all the physiological things. And so in the jumps, we know I mean, this is simple. This hasn't changed in physiology or exercise physiology. aerobic capacity can help anaerobic ability, right? Aerobic capacity also helps athletes recover, right? But I don't want to send my jumpers and long jumpers and triple jumpers on long runs.
Oh, come back, Jeremy.
And all this so early in the season so that it can benefit.
Jeremy, you
I think I
froze for a
froze there.
minute.
Yeah, I froze. Yeah.
The
So
last
so
we heard
basically,
was you don't want to send them out on long runs.
yeah. So I don't want to send them out on long runs, but I want to gain some aerobic ability. So early in the season, we're doing quote unquote aerobic work, but we're doing it in the pool, and this is nothing new. I mean, guys, Charlie Wells did this forever, and he was one of the most, successful coaches. He did it for two reasons. He did it one, build their aerobic ability and have a little bit of, hard work in that, but he wasn't putting, the pounding on the body. And so, it's just like, oh yeah, so I want to get a little bit of aerobic ability because of the benefits from it. This was a stupid, stupid case study. I mean, I went to Wisconsin, and at Wisconsin, we're known for distance, even though we finished fourth at NCAA's and we were pretty good. And so I messed up my shoulder one summer, and so I needed to keep my weight low. I had to stay at 145 pounds when I was a high jumper. And so running, I ran. And so, they had me running in the ARB and all these things. And I was helping Jerry Schumacher. I was his GA. So I was running like, 40, 50 miles a week. It was crazy, right? Terrible for a high jumper. But then in the fall, when I was doing all my anaerobic work and everything else, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the best like hills. I'm not throwing up. I'm running these 200s. I'm not sick. I'm recovering really, really well. And just, I didn't know it at the time, but because I built my aerobic ability, I was just increasing my anaerobic, ability huge. And I was staying in great shape and stuff like that. Now that's, great for a high jumper and probably not the best thing, but something clicked. And I was like, wow, something really benefited me. And so, you see it, I hate to say it, but when they cheat, they always use EPO with all the other drugs they're doing. Sprinters are, so that says something. I need that aerobic capacity. And I don't need to get in the physiology of it. You guys know it. Just having more oxygen to the blood, I mean, it is amazing, right? So we're not, and high jumpers, we are going to stay low. Female triple jumpers, we need to keep our body weight low. So we're doing pull work, and we're, and there's a bunch of studies. Nick Peterson is one of the people I talk to because he does a lot of pull work, and he has a great relationship with the swim coach. And so they work on a lot of breathing things that are helping. And then innately, it's helping their resting heart rate and their recovery and things from stuff. So it's pretty cool to, just secondhand learn this kind of stuff. And then just the way I am, I'm going to read about it and try to learn some more about it. And so, he was, I already did the work for swimming, but he introduced some stuff that's even kind of newer and, from a swim coach who that's where they live, right? And so building that aerobic capacity. So that's one of the energy systems. Then, I think something that gets neglected and we forget is building that tendon ligament strength. Okay. The tendon ligament strength. And so if you guys want to do kind of just a whole little thing on it, I mean, Stefan Holm is the perfect example of a tendon ligament strength built athlete from 4 years old until he won the Olympic gold medal. I mean, that's a master class in tendon ligament strength, and they have a lot of biomechanics analysis on it. And so, gosh, I've lost some great people recently. I got to work with Wolfgang Ritzdorf.
Froze again.
Yeah, we froze again.
I'm going to be leaving you guys in about 5-10 minutes. Unfortunately, I had another Zoom call already set up before I found out about this. So, just want to tell everybody thanks. So before Jeremy comes back on, to
Yeah.
let them know.
Sorry, I
10
cut out
minutes.
again.
Okay.
I cut out again. I'm just
hang
gonna
on.
keep my.
Hang on just a second. Bobby's leaving us here.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to finish, Bobby?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say
Sorry.
that, I'm going to be trying, join more and more. And so just unfortunately on this call, I'm actually, Jeremy, I'm cheating because I'm actually on the East Coast right now. And so and so I have a West Coast Zoom meeting that I'm supposed to been doing for my foundation that I usually do on Wednesday. So is this going to be actually everyone on Wednesdays most of the time?
Yep, every
Okay.
Wednesday. And I'll get with you, Bobby, and send you the emails directly.
Okay, because my foundation stuff is on that also, so I'm going to start adjusting that so I can be a part of this as well. So it's good to know.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
all right. Well, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me, and I'll be seeing you guys soon. All right, Jeremy. Good job.
Yep.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, Bob.
Thanks, Bobby.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, Jeremy.
Sorry, I'm gonna keep my video off just because I
Okay.
think my daughter's watching Blue's Clues or something.
I
I
was
don't know.
gonna say
So
you got competition for the
yeah, exactly. Oh, you pay for this extra internet. Good lordy. But so we're talking about tendon ligament strength, and you can look and do a lot of research on that. But basically, we're spending time, and it takes 8 to 12 weeks or 2 to 3 cycles to build tendon ligament strength. And basically, kind of how to build that is to have the muscles in long, elongated positions, and then having them, activated slowly in those positions, and then progressing it to a little bit faster. Right. So a perfect thing would be like low walks, lunge walks, things like that. Right. And making sure we do that at least once a week to build that tendon ligament strength. The toes over the knees, even though people are like, oh, the toes over knees, I think they carried it too far. But there's some great, gosh, I know unfortunately, I tore my Achilles, and then I obviously had Will Clay tear his. And so I learned a lot about, stretch and all that kind of stuff from that. And so, and I think we did a good job. I mean, 1744 after a torn Achilles, I think was pretty good. And I felt like he could have got a little bit further if we had more time. But um, so it's being in like low walks, lunge walks, being in those, I call it a tendon ligament circuit, and we're doing it over like 15 to 20 meters. And we do it for like 8 weeks, and the athletes will know because the muscles fatigue and they're tired, but they recover from it, and it's not a hard on the body. So, it may be like low walks, you know, 15 meters to like doing 10 prisoner squats, then walking backwards, low walks to, doing calf raises, things like that. And doing about 8 to 10 exercises and building that up over, in the preseason to build those up. And we're trying to build that tendon ligament circuit. And the one things that we see is our hamstrings stay healthy. The jumper knees stay away. The, shin splints stay away from those kind of things. And so really, I think sometimes the tendon ligament strength, it gets neglected. And then you guys can see in the weight room while we're doing those things uh, at this time, we're doing, larger ranges of motion, and we're doing things slowly. So if I look at the correlation, kind of the things, I'm doing the thing that has the least correlation to actually high jumping, long jumping, or triple jumping, and as far as time and stuff like that. And so we have the time for that. And I mean, this year, I mean, I don't know if you guys looked at the schedule, but USA's is the last weekend, basically in July, first weekend, August. So unlike the trials this past year, which was 3 weeks between NCAAs and trials, now I think it's like 8 or 9 weeks.
Mhm.
And then the World Championships are the 13th through the 22nd of September. Right. So it's crazy because most people are already starting practice for the next year, and we're just hitting our track World Championships. And so, I'm taking time to develop, and I'm taking time to really, kind of build into that. And so the tendon ligament strength things becomes really, really important from that standpoint. All right. And then the next thing I'll talk about, obviously, is just the body's natural tendencies. And this is a good thing to do and to work on early in the season. Okay. And so what I mean by body's natural tendencies is there's innately things that we as human beings do from even a subconscious, or if we're going a flight versus a flight or flight kind of thing. There's things that we innately do. All right. And so we're trying to look at what things do I have to teach my athletes out of that come natural, right? You always hear the expression, Vince Anderson. I mean, there's so many different people say it. You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Okay. And so in fight or flight, innately, when we have an increase in our arousal level, athletes want to be in flexion. Okay. And what that means in flexion is they are ready to be kind of crouched, bent at the waist, hands up, knees bent, and they want to take off. Right? They want to fight, right? Or they want to go out and sprint and flight. Okay. And so because of that, the innate nature of an athlete is to crouch, is to be sitting on their hips, to have the interior rotation. Right? If you guys have ever coached a pole vaulter, they always want to be close to the bar. And then we're trying to teach them, close to the pole. And we're trying to teach them to be as far away from the pole as possible. If a high jumper, when they first are learning, they want to jump really close to the bar. And we're really trying to teach them to be far away from the bar. So innately, we want to be closer and we want to be guarded and we want to be protected. So we need to teach our athletes to be a bear, to be into extension. And I don't think that, from a motor learning and motor standpoint, that's probably one of the hardest things that we're trying to teach our athletes is to be in extension. Okay, to have those body postures that aren't naturally occurring. So having neutral hips instead of having anterior rotation at the hips, which just cleans up so much stuff, right? To make sure that when we're hitting with, 8 times our body weight, that we're able to stick our leg out and minimize the bend in our knee, right? And so during the early part of the season, we do that with rudimentary and very easy drills where we work on posture, right? So a good technical coach is going to do a lot of easy rudimentary drills working on the posture because it's a motor learning standpoint. If you start to do those things, and it's almost the 10,000 hour thing, but if you do it in the right position, then it's much easier to correct at later on down the road when we're increasing the intensity. Because if we're trying to have our athletes all of a sudden, drop their free leg in the triple jump, and we haven't done anything to do it, and they're trying to do it at about 75% of speed, it's going to be really hard to do. So we have to do those things rudimentary, work on posture, work on all those things early preseason. Okay. Another thing athletes like because of the flexion and the just innate nature is they want to use shorter levers. They don't like long levers, right? The athlete likes to be the ice skater that puts their arms in and spins. They like to have short levers. They like to have the levers behind them with backside mechanics because it feels closer when they're coming through to their center of mass compared to what's what we want, right? And so we have to teach the athletes to create longer levers, right? We want to have the flexion. We want, you're seeing maybe 15 to 20 degree or 15 to 20 degrees of flexion sometimes at long jump when they're hitting to take off. We want to minimize that, right? It's just like everybody who runs faster in the long jump runs further. It's also the person who has least flexion in that takeoff leg also jumps further. Okay. So we're trying to treat those levers. Balance and postural issues. Okay. Everything we know that we have the braking, support, propulsion. I mean, it doesn't matter. Distance runner, sprinter, thrower, jumper. We all do braking, support, and propulsion. So the better braking capabilities we have, the better support capabilities we have, then obviously propulsion is going to be directly affected by that. So if we break that down from a science standpoint and a weight room standpoint, we do a lot of concentric work, but are we doing eccentric, isometric work so that we're building all 3 of those things? Are we doing stuff to help with the braking? Are we doing things to help with the support, right? And having unstable. And when we talk about that, and I got to work with Jill McNitt, who's the biomechanist at USC, and she's helped me a lot over the years. And we talk about dynamic stability, and that's postural stability. So yes, okay, we can plank for 2 minutes, right? But can we also have that same kind of postural integrity and support and strength through the core when we're running 10.5 meters per second on the ground for 0.14 seconds and creating, 6, 7, 8 times our body weight, whatever it is. Okay. So those are the things that, I'm trying to make sure that we're looking at. And then obviously I talked about the learning styles. All right. So we cover that with a lot of things early on. I mean, we're in the pool. I mean, my fall probably doesn't look like a lot of other coaches. We don't in college, yes. I mean, we ran a lot, we did all that stuff. We had time because basically practice started the first week in September. We were doing indoors and outdoors. Every one of my athletes said, "Are we doing indoors this year?" And I'm like, no, you guys like it, I don't, I'm pretty good about periodizing, but this one's going to be a hard one for me to have, indoors and world indoors in March and then having world championships in September. And professionally in sports, they do not care what you do indoors. You could be the world champion indoors and they do not care. Tier support, all that support that comes from USA Track and Field is you have to be top 15 in the world or a finalist at World Outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy. They don't even give a world medalist a tier. It's only if you're top 50, make that, final 8 outdoors. And so knowing that's the game and the support that the athletes need, that's what we're gearing for. And so this year is fantastic. I get time to go through all my things. So we do gymnastics because I can get a lot of foot contacts. All right. So we do about 6 weeks of gymnastics in the fall. All right. And in that, we're working a lot of things. The high jumpers, all right. One thing, if you guys ever work with high jumpers, and one of the things that I tend to see is if everything's okay, one of the hardest things for a high jumper is their sense in air and time and space. And so a lot of times they'll clear the bar by 3, 4 inches, but then when they get that falling feeling, which happens in the high jump, they tuck their chin. And when they tuck their chin, their butt comes down. And even though their back's 2 or 3 inches over the bar, they hit it with their butt. Because as soon as they get that falling feeling, their tendency is to protect their neck, right? And so they tuck their chin to protect their neck. And so we go to gymnastics so we can learn to be comfortable with that falling feeling and being laid out and fall over the bar. So it's a little bit of timing things that we work with. For long jumpers, triple jumpers, I want them sometimes to feel out of position. I want them to do something where their chest is forward, land into a foam pit, land on the ground in that position, and then make the corrections for themselves. Motor learning, we know that when an athlete can fix themselves and feel for themselves, the thing that you're trying to teach them will last a lot longer and they'll make the changes better. So we're doing the gymnastics at least one day a week for 6 to 8 weeks because of the fact that I want them to feel out of position. I want them to feel their time and space in the air when they become, a flying object, what a true parabola should feel like versus a more vertical parabola versus a horizontal one. They're feeling in the air and stuff like that. So I know someone asked that question about gymnastics, and yes, I mean, I'm very much, if you have access to gymnastics, definitely do it. And for young athletes, you can teach them positions. So even though I have sprinters who come in with the Paralympic side who are sprinters, and we're working on sprint mechanics on that bouncy floor because I can get more repetitions in. I can get that max velocity feel for them, the neuromuscular feel for it without the pounding, right? And this is early season stuff. And then we'll do it again with the high jumpers. And I don't do long and triple jumpers, but I go back with the high jumpers close to championship part of the season because I want them to even get more comfortable with time in the air and start to marry those things a lot more. Okay. And so I like to be able to use, those things that are available to me. All right. But just, my thoughts as I'm talking about science and I'm talking about the different things is I want to be able to have my athlete ready for, again, the demands of the event. And so I'm trying to go through that from a biomechanics standpoint, a physiology standpoint and then a mental standpoint. Because coaches, we know, I mean, any coach will tell you, the only satisfaction I can have is I can get to the trials or I can get to the world championships, and I feel like I've done everything I've knew I could do to get that athlete ready. And if they're healthy, I feel really comfortable with how they're going to perform. But again, nothing's granted. I mean, you could do your best job in the entire world. The athlete could step off the bus at, the prelims and sprain their ankle. You just nothing's given. And so the only satisfaction I can get is that I am trying to make them as ready as they can be at that moment. So that was my little tidbit, and then I can start to open it up to questions, Sue.
Oh, great. Well, I've been frantically taking my notes here. Will you address the gymnastics? If I just go down the list, the gymnastic question. What if you don't have access to gymnastics? Is there anything that's not, that's similar that you could utilize, or is
Oh,
it?
for sure. I mean, like if you have two bands and a weight thing, I mean, I've probably got like 20 drills to use with bands for my athletes. I mean, we use bands. You guys can follow my Instagram a little bit. I'm actually going to start to describe more things now. But I mean, we have this one drill we use two bands, and the athletes drive their free leg, and then they press their hip at top of the jump. You couldn't do that on the ground, but you can use that in a power or a power rack with two heavy, strong bands, and you can work on knee drive, being comfortable with the knee drive, and pressing the hips, which is something that you would do on top of the jump.
Yeah.
Or for a triple jumper who's really struggling with, getting that free leg down to parallel, again, you can use bands where they cycle, drop that free leg and stay. And the interesting thing about that is if they don't keep their chest up and drop it down, they start to rotate forward. So it gives them instantaneous feedback of, do I have the right position? And for a long jumper, one of the hardest things for a long jumper is that whether they're using the hitch or the hang or any modified thing, we know that off the board, the free leg thigh should be about parallel and driven off the ground. That's why Brittany Reese is one of the greatest, because that's one of the things that she did. And so the athlete can work on driving that free leg with bands, holding that position, and then either getting extension or getting into their hang position. So there's so much creativity that can happen with bands
Mhm.
that, we do at gymnastics or we do just in the weight room, that's technical kind of things, and so it's just the creativity. Like I tell every coach, I mean, I remember Nick Peterson when he was first coaching, and he's a pole vaulter, like 17.6 pole vaulter, and he had success with long jumpers, and he was like, ah, man, I'm not getting this triple jump thing. And I said, Nick, if I sat there and asked you to do 20 drills for each part of the pole vault, you'd be able to tell me. Like, it's the same way in the triple jump. Like, create or know 20 drills to help your athletes achieve certain things. Long jump, same thing. Sprint, same thing. I mean, I watch Mac Wilkins out there, and he's got all these creative, amazing drills for his discus throwers. I mean, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. It's ingenuity. It's so cool, But
Mhm.
every coach, it does. I hate the excuse of like, well, I don't know how to coach the event. Yes, you do. We're all teachers, and we're all coaches, and we can coach any event if we were given, that kind of thing, that time
Right.
and the ability to do it. And so just having the creativity for that. So you don't need gymnastics. And nowadays, I mean, you can go into Amazon and buy one of those air floors. I think they're like a couple $100, and I think they go out to like 20 meters. And think how much bounding and drills you can do on an air floor that you could just put in your, gym at your at the high school, or at the track and at the
Yeah.
high school and whatever it is. And I mean, yeah, they're I think a couple $100 or something like that, and they're literally gymnastics floors.
Oh,
And so they're you fill them with air, and they're super bouncy, and you can do a lot of stuff with them.
nice, nice. Okay, next one. What are some of your recommendations for recovery days for jump?
Recovery days, and my things have changed a little bit from recovery days. My recovery days used to be just like we do yoga, we do like that kind of stuff. I like active recovery now. I'm not trying to create forces on the ground, but I love pull work. And as I've been talking to Nick Peterson about it, because, again, I'm getting the second hand, but there's a lot of study that and I have it here, perfect. There's a lot of studies done by swim coaches, and and again, it really fascinated me, and so I wrote it down to talk to you guys about. And there's a lot of research on how the hydrostatics of doing a water workout and it's beneficial for recovery. And so, it was almost kind of like on the same capacity where I always thought distance runners, I thought it was crazy because Sunday they went on a long run. It was like their recovery day,
Mhm.
right? And it's so almost using that same kind of thought process and the physiology of it. Yes, they're building and it's supposed to be kind of a recovery run kind of thing, but it's also kind of with the water. And there's this huge lymphatic recovery that happens when athletes are immersed in water, basically 80% of their body is in water. So whether that's, now we know stuff about ice baths, we know stuff about, all submersion and, contrast baths and everything else like that. But,
Right.
there's also something to being able to be in water, swimming and stuff like that for the lymphatic system. And, when you have a hard neuromuscular or hard central nervous system day the day before, what a great recovery tool for the next day. So a lot of pull work and we're doing a lot of yes, we're still doing yoga, yes, we're still doing some circuit training, light circuit training, but we've really started to utilize pulls
Mhm.
and all the little things that we can do. So
Okay.
that's a big thing for the athletes, and then it changes. I mean, a young athlete, they could do a hard neuromuscular plyo day on Tuesday. All the research will say that it takes 48 to 72 hours to recover from a hard plyometric kind of thing. And so training wise, sometimes we have to teach our athletes to go back to back days. I mean, it is, it's one of those things.
Right.
But by being able to take maybe 3 days for the older athletes, so they may go Tuesday, Friday, instead of Tuesday, Thursday. And so changing that up a little bit. And for Brittany, we were going one hard day a year at 34. When I mean, shoot, she was till the sixth jump. She was had that gold medal, and silver medal's not bad. And we were training like really one hard day a week, and that was
Hmm.
it. You know. And
Interesting.
so yeah, and early on though, obviously, we try to get 2 or 3 more days in a kind of a week. And I'll say this, it wasn't one day. I put Brittany on a 14-day schedule where we were doing 3 hard sessions in a 14 days
Yeah.
for recovery wise.
Yeah.
So
What's your opinion on supplements for high jumpers?
I, you know, uh, I really believe that because of, and I'm going to go back to my master's in nutrition, even though it's outdated probably because I was just talking to my wife about this, and it was my master's was in 1999. So imagine how many things have changed since then. I hate to say that it's almost going on 30 years, but the basics and the core of it are still the same. I mean, when I took creatine, it was powder, it was chalk, it was terrible, right? And you retained a lot of water weight. But now with today's creatine, you don't retain as much water as you did in the past. We also learned that the loading uh, sequence of it isn't as important as we thought it was before, right? It wasn't like, oh yeah, we had to super compensate things like that. And so there's a lot of learning that we do, but the one thing that I definitely have my athletes, and I'll talk about this. It doesn't matter if my athletes are black or white or Indian or whatever. One thing we see in a lot of athletes, despite the events, the Chinese, Korean, whatever, a lot of vitamin D deficiency. I thought maybe my African American athletes would be that just because of the pigmentation. But we learned that if you actually want to get vitamin D, you actually have to sunbathe nude because the reason is every part that your bathing suit covers is already protected.
So we want to go have a nude Olympics now or nude
Um, got froze. Yeah. So we definitely supplement vitamin D. I mean that's a huge one for our athletes. Um, the B complexes are big. Um, Creatine I like during certain phases of lifting. So I like it during strength phases eccentric phases, and strength endurance phases. Okay. I don't feel like we need it in competition. Okay. But the B vitamins, the magnesium, zinc, those things are important. So, and the vitamin D. So those are the main things we're looking at. Then you have to look at when you're, using them. So some athletes will have iron that they have to take, especially my female athletes. And if you're taking zinc and magnesium, they can actually bind with the same proteins, and then they kind of could be negative on it. I think the evolution too, we're starting to see, and the distance coaches can back me up on this, is we're not just seeing microcytic and macrocytic anemia to be spread out as much anymore. So it used to be just, oh, we're giving you, uh, ferritin, or we're giving you something to, kind of help you with your iron. We're also seeing that a B complex vitamin with the iron supplementation is helping, just the overall growth of, the iron levels and stuff like that. So for my female athletes, I'm probably a lot more concerned about obviously the B vitamins and the iron for them.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, high jumpers again, and my jumpers period, strength to weight ratio is so huge. All right. So, I'm not using those. I want to say, and I don't want to call them that, but I'm not trying to use my anabolic metabolites as much
Mhm.
in the championship part of the season. I'm using them earlier in the fall, and then we pretty much quit them after a certain while.
Okay. And just as FYI for the audience, Scott Christensen has a real good presentation too on vitamins and when to use them, or supplements and when to use them, when not to use them, and so forth. So that's a whole different presentation. But keep
And Scott and I are doing a class together in Atlanta, so make sure
right now, are
you
you
guys
guys
check it out.
are you going to Zoom that?
So I talked to him a little bit, and I want to try to record. I don't know if he's going to Zoom it because it's a master class. We're inside, outside, back and forth.
Uh-huh.
But I think what we're going to try to do is have it. We're going to try to film it as much as we can, and then
Okay.
upload it at another time. So that was the one thing I think. I was like, well, you should talk to one of the local high schools about trying to do that, but I don't know.
Well, as much as you could share with us, that'd be great. Those of
Of
us
course, of
on
course.
non-Atlanta. Do you have a favorite high jump shoe right now?
Oh gosh, it's and Sue, you know this. All the elite high jumpers have shoes that are made for
Yeah,
them,
they're special.
and unfortunately, the high jump shoes that are out there, and I'll say this, they're all. I mean, excuse my language, they're crap. They're terrible.
Mhm.
The problem is, I mean, okay, so I will say this. I designed the triple jump shoe from Nike that was probably from 2012 to 16. A lot of pole vaulters liked it. Triple jumpers not as much, and a lot of long jumpers liked it. But the reason I created the shoe was because Will Clay, it was for him, and it was because he has terrible bunions, so he can't have a slip or last or plate that goes further back than midsole.
Mm.
And so I know I got cut back from like Randy Huntington and a couple of people. Like I'm like, Randy, I didn't design the shoes for anybody else. We designed it for Will, right? And then they made it for everybody else. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but it was great for Will, right?
Right.
And so the problem with the high jump shoe is they create it for someone, and then they don't use it. So like Eric Kennard, I got to work with Eric his last like year and a half, and the shoes that Jordan made him were amazing. And I'm like, why aren't you guys releasing these, Nike? The ones that Vashti Cunningham has are not available to the public, and they're an amazing shoe. And they're all based on the Pro Asics Japanese high jump shoe. And you can't get them in the US. So you got to go to Japan or know someone in Korea or someone who can get you those shoes.
There's where your market needs to
And
be now.
I know every time I go back to Asia, I need to bring a whole bunch of shoes back
That's
and
right.
sell them.
Exactly.
But I mean, the Adidas shoe is probably the better of the ones off the shelf, I'd say. But unfortunately, the Asics one off the shelf is not even close to the Japanese model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Mizuno used to be that way too.
yeah, Mizuno's got a great high jump shoe too. But again, you can't get it in the United States. That's the
Right.
problem.
Right.
So
Do you have a favorite high jump venue indoors?
Uh, let's see. Yeah, I mean, it just for me, it's the Hochsprung meet in Germany in why am I have it? Eberstadt is outdoors. What's
Yeah.
the indoor one, Sue?
Um,
Oh, I forget. But
I know
basically,
what you mean.
it's
Yeah.
jumping off a basketball court. And so
Yeah.
basically, if they make it right, they jump about probably about 5 centimeters higher. So you'll see a lot of Europeans who have 5 centimeter higher PRs indoors compared to outdoors, and it's because they make the high jump take off like a basketball
US.
court.
Is there
Yeah,
any US
there's
indoors?
no place in the US that does it. The best jumps I've seen, it probably consistently probably was it probably is Fayetteville or New Mexico. Those are probably the two. But they also have the most meets, most high level meets. So
That's true. That's true.
yeah, yeah. So
Francis Garcia, did you get your questions answered about bands, or do you have? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them if you have.
Yeah, Jeremy covered it. He was
Okay.
talking with the bands.
Okay, I didn't want you to not get the coverage there.
oh, and also a good one for arch and stuff like that is using physio balls. You guys can do physio balls where, I have a drill where they actually lay back on the physio ball, put their head back, and then I control, their thighs as they roll back, and they tuck their head at the last second. So they get that falling, rotating feel, and then they could tuck their head. And then that's a nice one you could just do, on using a yoga mat and stuff like that. And so, high jump mats, obviously you can see a million ones as far as, kind of arches and stuff like that. And I teach the arch and teach them to do those kind of things because I know, Sue will tell you after you measure, people are still measuring and people are always late. So I always tell them to go onto the high jump mat and do some rotations and do some back bends and do stuff like that while everyone else is getting their marks and their measures. And so that way you can still get a little bit of warm up, a very specific warm up while the athletes are getting ready for the competition. And so but using physio balls is a good thing. Um, I'm not as athletic as I used to be, but just doing layouts onto a high jump mat, things like that. Teaching the athlete how to do a back bend, I think is really important, from a standing standpoint. I think that's a really good thing to teach, but yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how many guys especially can't do that.
Yeah. And Mac, we don't do our water work at the drug lord pool anymore. There's a pool because the training center didn't have a pool, so we used to do work at this thing called the drug lord pool because it's these houses that are $4 or $5 million and they let us use their pool and the pool is unreal. But no, I have about six in my neighborhood, so we just use the ones in my neighborhood.
You pool hop, huh?
Yeah, we have access to
Do
it
you use jump roping at all?
all the time. I mean, yeah, I use jump roping, and I think that's kind of more of a Jeremy path to success kind of thing.
Mhm.
My high school, and I jumped 7'4" in high school, and like 23, 11, or 10 in high school too, and he had me jump roping all the time, and so I didn't know I was doing so much elastic strength work, and you guys know it's anaerobic work if you start doing a lot. And so I
Right.
love jump ropes to this day. I love them.
And then do you do the pool work year round or just preseason and then recovery?
So we okay, and I will caveat this. So in California, we very rarely have access to indoor pools.
True.
And sometimes they will not heat their pools. And so I use the pool workout for the first about 8 weeks. And then it gets a little too cold in January and February, and I stay away from the pools for a little bit of time. And then we'll use it intermittently so in March, especially if we do indoors, we kind of go back to a building kind of thing again. And so we'll use the pool again in March and April, and then we use it intermittently during the spring, just to, sometimes to get off the impact and forces on the ground. So
Mhm.
I got about 4 different workouts. They hate them all, and they're really good ways to, you guys can listen to Harry Mara, and he talked about how Ashton had to be in the pool for 2 months because he had such bad patellar tendonitis, and then he went out and ran a PR in the 100, ran like 10:28 or something. So there's a lot of benefits
Oh,
to
yeah. I mean, pool works, we used to do that at Texas with the distance runners when they would get banged up. And then, like you say, good pool workouts and they go out and then PR win conference right after.
Yeah, and Sue, that's a great point. I mean, it's funny, we always do things after athletes get banged up, but why not have that as part of our prehab? And that's kind of a thing I
Exactly.
took years ago, is taking a lot of the things that I steal from physical therapy and therapists, and we do it before we get hurt. So we're doing band work where we're working on, like one of my favorite ones, especially for jumpers, is we're doing calf raises in all, directions. So we're going 0, we're going 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And we're using bands to create forces in different, ways. And so we're doing a lot of that to, build the strength and keeping the athletes, their tendon and ligament strength high, right? So those are the things that we learning um, from our athletes, and how to move through those positions and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of stuff you guys can implement in your coaching, and especially early season. Just steal it from the physical therapists and stuff,
Yeah.
because you know
Do
they're
you have
huge.
a visual, I mean, video of any of all these band exercises that you
Yeah,
weights?
you guys can go on my Instagram, and I have videos of almost everything.
Okay.
I have them on my YouTube page. Just, follow Jeremy Fischer, and you guys can see them on there. But I try to post as much information as possible. I'm on my personal website, or my new thing. I'm actually relaunching my online business. It's done really well, but I want more people to be in the community, so I'm relaunching that because I want, the field distance runners have Let's Run, throwers have thrower, and
Yeah.
jumpers. We need a community board where we're just sharing ideas and talking, and that's the whole goal of it. I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I'm just trying to, have open dialogue. Like I said, I've talked to about 10 coaches so far over the last like 2 months.
Mhm.
And just ask them, like, give me 15 minutes of your training philosophy or something that you guys are doing that's cool and neat. That's the stuff that needs to be on a community board where coaches can go and be like, oh, let me read more about that, or let me listen to this coach say that. And that's the what I'm trying to do with the community board. It's free, and
Yeah,
I'm really, it's really, I'm trying to open dialogue. That's the big thing I'm trying to do.
that's fantastic. You know,
So,
I'll be right on there.
Yeah.
so,
David, do you
so
have a question still?
Yeah, just real quick. When do you start developing your jumpers, their full approach? And when you get to competition, do you start with short approach or do you start with their full approach?
No, that's a great question. I'm literally teaching them their full approach almost from day one. So, like sprinters, they're coming out of the blocks, they're learning acceleration work or kind of whatever. To me, it's like, basically a full approach for most jumpers is what, about 40 meters, right? So one of my favorite things to do is to do a segment run where I teach them 13 meters acceleration to 26 meters. I'm doing transition from acceleration into max velocity like sprint mechanics. And then I'm doing max velocity like sprint mechanics from 26 to 39 meters. And that's almost a full approach, but I'm teaching them to build it, to transition, and to be tall. So I'm teaching them the rhythm of the run early on. Now we may only jump, like I said, I've had triple jumpers that only jump from 10 steps, 12 steps, things like that. Most of my long jumpers, I say we start at 16, we may go back to 18, maybe 20 if they get there. But no, we're doing those runs where I want them to get to early on. And we'll do it early on in the season, rhythmically, kind of to build. We'll do full approaches. And then as the season goes on, yes, so Monday might be an acceleration day and we're doing approaches, and we're doing, you know, uh, 18 steps or whatever is their full I want them to get to. And then Thursday or Friday, maybe before the competition or before the meet, then we're doing the approach that we have set up for the weekend. So I'm kind of like priming that kind of thing. But no, I want them to feel what we want to get to eventually, because it's much easier to go from shorter than it is to go from longer. And so yeah, that's kind of how I do it.
Any more jump specific questions? Because we're going a little long, but Jeremy, I figured we
Sorry,
might get a
I
little
got on late, so I apologize.
Any other jump specific questions anybody'd like to ask him? Okay, any
Yeah,
other?
Sue, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Okay, DeAndre.
Yeah. What are you noticing, Coach, after high school? What are you noticing? Are there any? What am I trying to say? Are there any tendencies that you're seeing from high schoolers going into college and from college athletes, going into post-collegiate world? Like, are there any tendencies of things that you have to fix, errors and things of that nature?
I think, and this is just kind of my, outside looking in. I think this is the greatest time we've ever had for high school coaches in the history and I've been coaching for 25 years now. And I mean, I feel like high school coaches are doing such a good job of developing athletes. I'm not saying that they're best technically, but they're doing a great job with strong and getting them fast and relatively, solid technique, right? And so in the college problem, and this is the conversation I have with a lot of college coaches, is the problem with the college coaches is that at the end of the day, you have to score points. And so the athlete gets faster. And when's their most strength and when's their most speed going to happen? Between 18 and 23 years old, right? After they're not going to get much faster. They're not going to get that much stronger relatively. Their technique and their intelligence gets higher, and their ability to get to their strength levels happens quicker, right? You call it man strength or woman strength, and we get that about 26, 27 years old. So the athletes out of high school, they're doing a fantastic job, and there's so much more information out there for the athletes. Yes, some of it's bad, but some of it's really good too. So these athletes, like, you look at Keenan Briggs, or you look at just I think like Tachyon and stuff, and they do a great job with development, right? And kids are coming from all over to work with those, coaches. I know there's a good coach up in, the New York area. It's just there's a lot of access of good information for the athletes. So I'm seeing, quality marks, but the problem is then to get them from, like I did. DeAndre, I'm gonna kind of jump off just topic for a sec, or just kind of. So I looked at analysis because, I disagree with the way USA Track and Field has done development over the last couple of years. And the reason is because we had in the last since 2010, and I'll cut out COVID, we have on average had 3 American jumpers over 8 meter 808 in the US, right? And in that time, if you take Will, Jeff Henderson, um, and I'm only counting outdoor medals, okay? We've had one outdoor medalist, and that was Jarian. And Jarian got screwed by the system, but Jarian, he's the only guy who had a silver medal in London in 17, right? So you can't sit there and tell me we don't have the athletes to get to where Jeff Henderson was. Jeff Henderson was not Jeff Henderson leaving Spelman or Heinz Community College. He developed into that when he was 26, 27 years old because he had the resources to do it, right? So we have the ability to take those athletes, but it's also we had to revamp his technique, his style, his running, all those kind of things, and that takes time, right? And so, yes, the high school coaches are doing a great job of developing the kids. The kids are stronger, the kids are faster, and they're jumping far. But then they get to college and they're not refining their running anymore. I sit there and I look and, I mean, no one else might say this, but I look at bowling and that guy could have been an 850 long jumper. Now he's just too bulky.
Totally agree.
too big, but but that guy could be an 850, 860 long jumper. I look at Javon Harrison and he could jump 860,
Yeah.
right? And he also could jump 245 in the high jump. Right. And there's other athletes. I mean, there was Mark Grimes who jumped 820. He already jumped 829. You don't have to get him much further. We just got to get him consistent. And nothing against Keith. I mean, Keith is a great coach, but it's making sure that, we develop and change that at that next level with those athletes. And that takes time. And, demanding our college coaches to do that, that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot. And we just don't have the training enclaves and things to do that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So,
that's the issue, is that again, the system is not allowing for the extra time, like you said at the very beginning, that these events need.
yeah. I
And
mean, look at the distance is a perfect example of that. Look at all that money that's thrown in the distance, and look at how amazing Olympics we had.
yep,
People just, coming. I actually thought the women would do a little bit better because we had such a good trials with our females, and I mean, not that they ran terrible. It's just the world is so good. It's
right,
not. I mean, my issue. I was sitting there up until trials. I sat there and said, "Hey, you can't blame on the Kenyans because Ingrid Britson's doing it, Kerr's doing it, so it was nice to see our distance guys go through. And again, Hull did it from Australia, so why can't our American girls do it too? So it's
right.
not an African thing. You can't, tell me that. But it's getting the opportunities. And so kind of DeAndre, I know I kind of went off on a tangent, but definitely I'm seeing they're stronger and faster out of high school. And I still work with high school kids. I have camps and kind of see that. And the kids are, yeah, I don't care. There are still some kids who really want to work hard and put themselves out there and they achieve it. I mean, I had a kid came in at 1910 and 40'2", and this year he jumped 47.6 and 23.10 and finished third at the California State meet. And nothing I did, I just gave him the tools, but he worked his butt off to get there, as a junior. And so the kids are the talent there, and the kids are there. It's just, each level, not just being like, okay, the kid jumped that, but we're going to have to do this if I want this kid to jump 8 meters. And then the coach then post collegiately or even at college going, okay, we jumped 8 meters, but we got to do this to jump 830. And so I think that's the changes that need to be made.
Excellent, excellent. Al, is it jump related?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things, plus the swim thing, Jeremy and I and Scott were all in both USATF and USTF CCA coaches ed together. And remember Jeremy? We were all together.
Yeah, no, I know. I kind of no, Al, it's good to see you again. And Mark Napier says hello all the time and says
Yeah.
amazing things about you. But yeah, no, we did all the coaching ed. I haven't done USTF CCA for a while, but yes, I did initially.
When I was at Florida State and at Mississippi State, so we would do swim workouts in the morning sessions after a hard afternoon the night before. Instead of doing a morning run, we'd go in the pool and do running in the pool, not touching the bottom, but running in the pool with ski belts on or for those that were good enough to stay tall and be not have to use those. We use that a lot. But then also when I was at Florida State, Vern Gambetta early on in the early 80s taught us circuit training with med balls and as Scott was talking about, I mean, soccer throws, overhead throws, chest passes, twists with heavy medicine, 30-pound, 20-pound, 15-pound, 10-pound medicine balls. And then, of course, all the sprint drills, all the jump roping, all the bounding, with distance runners. In fact, I remember when I got to Mississippi State and the distance runners would come back from a run and they had to do circuit for 2 hours. And I said, Coach, is there ever an easy day? It's because they've never done this before. Sit-ups with med balls, everything you could imagine with med balls to become the athlete that they weren't before. Tiffany Williams was a basketball player and a triple jumper, Jeremy, when before she in her sophomore year broke Susie Favor's record. And as Scott does, and we do, sprinting is the best eccentric contraction. You can't mirror eccentric contraction in the weight room because it's the speed of the contraction, but it also improves the Golgi tendon apparatus and every ligament you need for eccentric contraction, whether it's in the arms, the shoulders, the hips, the hamstrings, it moves every joint. Any joint that you have muscles connected with, you have a Golgi tendon apparatus that protects injury to ligaments and increases speed and contact with the ground. Marcus Grant in the high jump, you remember Marcus?
Yeah.
He was 7'7", and I had to teach him. He would sit, as you were talking about, over the bar and not jump. He would sit on the bar. He'd be over the bar with his back. And I taught him to sneak a peek at the bar with the corner of his eye, that when he saw his hips over the bar, he would then tuck his chin. And that's when he jumped 7'7". He and Eric Kennard had battles every time they jumped against each other when he did it right. He was also very tall, but he was always upright. I taught him to be upright. Erica Bogard.
Erica's one of the best athletes I've ever been fortunate to work with.
Erica came out of high school playing basketball only, and we had to teach her everything. And I was the biggest guy teaching her speed and hurdling and believe it or not, the javelin, which you got her better at. Taught her how to Steve Thomas and I taught her how to long jump, but her speed. Her biggest problem when she got to you is she never, because of her slight build, she would lose points in areas but the areas where speed was involved, even she never high jumped in her life, and she was over 6'1", 6'2" at Mississippi State, and because she was so fast and did a great job with her eccentric contractions. So you're right, in college, you have to teach high school kids how to be, and Scott's right, Vern Gambetta is a genius when it comes to teaching kids to be athletes, especially distance runners, to be athletes and jump rope and all that med ball work and all those drills that we did. I know Boo's not a big fan of teaching mock drills to teach sprint mechanics, but I disagree with him a bit on that. And
no, I'll agree with you. If you sit at any world championships and you watch athletes, the best, the one thing that they do is they're very efficient with their mechanics and they're very like crisp and clean.
Right.
And there's no sloppiness. And so I know, I don't disagree with Boo, but I'm just saying like just what I view is that every athlete at the elite level, they're clean and they do an amazing job. And they are so, those ankles are tight, their heels are tight, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so like, yeah, if you're teaching an athlete who doesn't know how to do those things, if they can't do those successful, then they're not going to do the other stuff successfully.
And you're right about the vitamins, and Scott taught me a lot about that. B12 is very important. Zinc and especially vitamin D. You think that being out in the sun is going to increase your D a lot, but you do have to have supplements, and the B's with the D helps a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a 74-year-old man that has to take vitamin D because I got enough skin cancer. I don't go outside in the sun anymore, so but the bottom line is you're right about, and the pool is an amazing place to recover. And as a distance coach, it was easy to do it, and we would do it with our jumpers and everybody else like you do. But we also simulate things that by running in the pool, we simulate what their activity was like the day before. And you're right, you probably have to do things that you simulate what you went through before, especially with the levers in your body that you had to use the night before to do the things that you had to do. But Scott's right, Vern Gambetta, if you ever want to listen to somebody, Vern is beautifully, he taught us how to do circuit training, and to the point where the athletes wonder, will we ever get a day off? And so but the bottom line is jumpers. It's amazing to watch the girl from Ukraine jump. I've never seen anybody wrap around the bar and finish land as close as she does in the pit, and wrap around that bar and have a perfect knowledge of where her hips are over the bar.
Yeah,
So
she's something else. Well, we're getting to a point here where we're losing people, and I don't want to go way past our time with this. So, well, one quick last one, Jeremy, in Paris, did you see the speed of the run or the track? Did that affect the approach on our jumpers? Approach?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they had access to the practice track and those kind of things. I'm not a I don't I believe that the only thing that hurts us a little bit, and I don't think we have a lot with this, is that we don't have access to Mondo like that a lot in the US.
Mhm.
Meaning that like usually at the practice tracks they put in Mondo and they update them and stuff like that. But like us having, if we're supposed to simulate what we're supposed to have, unfortunately using, the track they have at Eugene is not
Right.
good to, simulate obviously the stadium setting, but that's not going to be, seems like we'll be there forever.
Yeah.
And
what wasn't the surface elevated off of the ground like an indoor track is?
No, that was at the European Championships with the jumpers. They didn't
Yeah,
have
that
that
was
at,
different.
and yeah, they
I
didn't have
thought
that at
I thought the track at the Olympic Games was not uh I thought it was elevated from the
no, I mean
No, there
for
was
all
moved
intents and
past
purposes it
those.
was, yeah, it was on the ground,
Yeah,
even with the grass and everything else like that. It wasn't elevated. So
yeah.
it's just that the track is so hard, and even um, like I wouldn't want to train on that really. Like
Mhm.
I might, have a couple practices when we're in our most elite kind of time, but I mean, being on model like that would just destroy your your legs and your body and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
but no, I think the performances were good. I think just with the rain and some of the things that had happened, some of the performances tend to be down. But I mean, you look at today with the shoes and technology, the only area that doesn't have any improvements in technology is the jumps.
Yep, yep.
I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, distance, you got the shoes and you've got the light and you've got all that. The sprinters, they're not running a lot faster, but they're consistently running faster because of the spikes. But the jumpers are not jumping higher and they're not jumping further with the carbon plates. I mean, with Will and Brittany, they hated the carbon plate shoes. We didn't use them at all because we didn't like them the way they felt. And so I don't think that we're getting the same effect from the technology so far. The only time I saw it was when they had the elevated runway at European Championships.
Mhm.
I mean, that basically gave every jumper like about 20, 30 centimeters.
Or
So
maybe
if
World Indoors had it.
World
I
Indoors, I
remember
don't
seeing
remember.
Tara climb up stairs for something, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not.
remember.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, they did it one time at in London when we had that like USA versus
Maybe that
European
was
thing or whatever. But there's not, yeah, they don't. That's the only way jumpers are going to get advantage if they
Yeah.
start putting like elevated runways for outdoors.
Well,
Like
this
Jeremy,
week,
what did you do to teach Tiffany how to land in the pit?
Oh, you mean Brittany?
Tiffany.
Brittany, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Brittany.
no. Hey, Mississippi has some unbelievable athletes. So, they all like coming through the training center because, we had her, we had Tori, we had Erica and stuff like that. And Chris Mack was Erica's primary coach. I worked with her a little bit, but no, Brittany just gymnastics. That's where we spent a lot of time. Gymnastics, working on getting her legs extended and out. And so that was the advantage of being able to teach her because she wouldn't do it in the sand initially, but she would do it in the foam pit. And we just, repetition, we finally got her and to learn a little bit of that because she was going to get hurt if she kept landing like that, unfortunately.
ACL is gonna go.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
something like that. So we needed to make that change for
Well,
sure.
Jeremy,
But I
thank
love,
you
go
so
ahead, but
much.
I love, I will say this, my last thing was,
Okay.
I loved it with, her old coach, at Mississippi. Who's like, her landing was beautiful because it was further than everybody else's.
Got him those 10 points. That's a
Yeah,
big
exactly.
thing,
And
definitely.
then some, and a gold medal.
Right, right. Well, Jeremy, thank you so very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry for
Kinda
being
went-
late and
We went all over the
of
place
course.
today, but I think it was well worth it. And thanks again for staying a little longer, the 23 of us that did. And Jeremy, now that you're a high jump coach, I'm going to have to be calling you.
No, I'm going to be calling you soon.
Okay.
It's the other way around, and I got a secret weapon because I send a lot of my videos to Jamie Ato to break down. So I have that too. So now I've got Sue and Jamie
There you
to help
go.
me. But you guys, please sign up for that community board. Again, I'm just trying to like have that same communication. For me, it's like I don't. It's free. I'm not making money off it. It's just a place where we can go and have conversations and talk mess and talk about the jumps and just all that other stuff. So
And
let's
that's MV.
sign up NBA services and sign up for the community board. It's free,
Yeah,
and so I hope to see you
MVAF.
guys on there.
Great.
So
Well, thanks
so
again, everybody. And next week is John Hayes, Wake Forest. So we'll be back to our distance running. So
Sounds good.
thanks again. Have a good week.
All right.
See
Thanks,
ya.
Jeremy.
See you next week.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. You're the greatest.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks,
problem.
Jeremy.